In those days, the crest was in service to the shade, protectors of Heartvale. Other than our chirurgeon, Irongull has been with the crest longer than anyone else. In many ways, the sergeant embodies what it means to be crest. He left his past in Felvan and speaks not of it. He has dedicated his life to the company, and it shows in the strength and dedication of the ranks he commands. I have fought many battles beside Irongull, and there is no better man to have at your side. Our brothers and sisters ranged farther from Heartvale, following the trail of blood into the woods. Irongull arranged his 5 crest in a loose formation around the lieutenant. The sergeant himself took point, knowing there was the possibility of an ambush. But we crest do not shy from doing what needs done. And because of his alertness and the trust he instilled in the ranks, they were ready when the attack came. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures. As always, I'm your game master and solo player, Steve Morrison. On this week's episode, Benn tries to track down the people who spoke with the King's Word operative. Find out what happens on episode 23, Expert Trackers. Irongull leads the members of the crest through the forest, following the blood trail. He is walking along, studying the various droplets and where they've dried and where the branches and undergrowth have been disturbed. He is walking along at the forefront of this group of crest soldiers when he stops and cocks his head. He listens for a moment as there is something on the wind. His hand goes towards the sword that is strapped to his side, and as he does so, he looks back towards the others. They are also alert and aware, ready for trouble. Lephalia has a wide smile on her face as she begins drawing lines in the air. Irongull, turning back, says out loud, "Well, we might as well get this over with." At which point a cry arises, and a group of individuals emerge from the underbrush, charging towards Irongull and his crest soldiers. They come in with a ferocity, but the crest soldiers are ready to meet them. Irongull begins barking orders to the 5 rank-and-file soldiers that are with them, knowing that Lephalia will take care of herself. They fan out and prepare to meet this onslaught as an arrow whistles through the air at Irongull's chest. The arrow stops in mid-air as Lephalia, laughing, gestures with her hand, and the arrow falls to the ground. In that instant, these attackers are on them, and Irongull and his crest soldiers are in the thick of it, fighting back and forth, tooth and nail, as their ambushers are trying to strike them down. Let us ask the fate chart. Are the crest able to resist this assault, this ambush? And I'm going to use the same chaos factor from the last scene, so a chaos factor of 5. And I think it is likely that they are going to be able to resist this ambush because of the presence of Lephalia and because of the regard that the Crest soldiers hold for Iron Gull. They will stand with him in the face of anything. They are not cowed. They are not beaten. They stand together. So let's say it's likely, and let's roll our percentile dice and ask the fate chart. 91, which is a no. They are not able to withstand this ambush. So I think what that means is they are pretty heartily outnumbered. Does this mean that they are captured, or are they driven back and therefore not able to continue following on this trail? I don't think it's very likely that they are going to be captured. I think they're going to be driven off by these ambushers. So I'm going to ask the fate chart, are they captured? And I think it is very unlikely. Here we go. 67 on the percentile dice is a no. No, they are not captured, so they are driven back. And what this looks like is Iron Gull and his rank and file soldiers have formed a battle line, and these attackers are pressing them back. They are flanking around, and so these Crest soldiers are being forced to adjust and retreat in order to prevent themselves from getting flanked by these enemies. Iron Gull quickly realizes that they are outnumbered and that they are not going to be able to turn the tide with Lephalia even. And so I think he orders a withdrawal. He says, "Crest, fall back!" And they begin making a fighting retreat. Now, here is the question. Are they able to escape this ambush relatively unscathed? I think it is going to be 50-50 on this one. 56 is a no, so they are not able to escape unscathed. So there are 7 Crest in this ambush. There's Lephalia and Iron Gull, and then 5 rank and file soldiers. I'm going to roll a d6, and that is going to determine how many Crest are injured or killed in this fighting withdrawal. So I'll roll a d6. 4. So are those 4 casualties? Are those 4 Crest soldiers who are killed, or are they just injured? Let's ask the fate chart. I don't think they're killed. I think it's very unlikely that they would be killed. I think they would be injured, and maybe, more heavily injured where they need to be carried by their fellows. But I think it's very unlikely. 0-4 is an exceptional yes. So they are killed. 4 members of the rank and file Crest are killed. That leaves Iron Gull, Lephalia, and 1 other Crest soldier who makes it out of this ambush alive. They are driven back. There is blood flowing on the ground as whoever these ambushers are relentless. They are driving the Crest back, and first 1 soldier falls, then another, then a third, and then finally a 4th before they are able to withdraw and escape from this fight. Meanwhile, at the Griffin and Moon in Valewater, Benn is sitting across from Silas Wilberforce. He has just agreed to assist Silas in getting to this Alfheim ruin that is about a day and a half's journey from here. And in exchange, he has procured from Silas a list of individuals that the Kingsword operative spoke with before he left. And I think we should roll a die. And I am going to, once again, roll a d6. But this time I'm going to split the answer in half. So a 1 to 2 will be one person was talked to. 3 to 4 will be 2 people. 5 to 6 will be 3 people. Just so we don't have to come up with like 6 names. Hey, I rolled a 6. So there are 3 people that Silas saw the Kingsword operative talking to. So why don't we go ahead and just roll up a description real quick of who these people are so we can get a sense of what we're dealing with. On the Maze Rats chart here, we're going to go under Appearance, and we're going to go ahead and roll. 6 and 6 is Wrinkled. So somebody who's maybe a little older and is a little bit wrinkled. Let's get a physical detail. 5 and 2, Oiled Hair. So maybe a merchant. And then what kind of clothing were they wearing? 4 and 4. Livery. So they were wearing the livery of a house. So I think definitely some sort of merchant house. So that is one person that this Kingsword operative talked to. Let's go for another appearance. 1 and 6. Brutish. So a figure more like Orchid, who's a little bit thicker and stronger. Let's get another physical detail here. 2 and 4. Curly hair. Okay, so this person is brutish with curly hair. What kind of clothing are they wearing? 3 and 1. Flamboyant. Interesting. So they're wearing flamboyant clothing. And then for the third person, once again, our appearance is 4 and 6. Scrawny. Physical detail. 3 and 6. A huge beard. And their clothing, 1 and 6, is dated. So I think Silas finishes describing these 3 individuals, and Benn says, very interesting. They seem like very different people for this Kingswood operative to be speaking with. And Silas says, yes, it does seem quite odd, doesn't it? But that is all I know, really. I can't quite tell you anything more. I didn't speak to these people myself. I just saw him talking to them. And of course, I could be mistaken. There might be more that he spoke with. Those are just the ones I saw during the time I was here. Benn considers this and looks over at Arid and Orchid and says, seems like we might have our work cut out for us tonight. We have to find these people and glean whether or not they have any information that is going to be useful. It's starting to get dark, so people are coming in for food. I think we should keep an eye out and we should go check those other inns as well. Maybe I'll go talk to the bartender again and see if he recognizes any of those people. Arid and Orchid both nod, and then Benn says, Arid, why don't you take the Tipsy Hound? Orchid, you go to the Romantic Maid and ask around. See what you can find out about these people. Arid says, my friend, what are we going to do about that magical power source in the basement here? Is that something that we should be concerned about? It could be connected to our purpose here, he says, looking cautiously at Silas, who is observing this conversation. Benn says, I think we'll have to worry about that later. For now, we need to find out if these people are still here in Veilwater, and if so, if we can find them. Orchid and Arid nod, and they rise and head out the door. Benn turns to Silas and says, Silas, hold the table for me. I'm going to go talk to Stilton. Silas nods and says, and then we'll set off in the morning? Benn looks back at him and says, that is uncertain at the moment. We need to determine if these people that you saw are still here in Veilwater, and if they are, then we need to speak with them before much more time passes. I also need to reconnect with my sergeant. He will be able to determine if we go to the ruin now or wait a little. But I promise you, I've given you my word of honor, that we will do this for you. We will help you with this. All right, then I will just wait here and enjoy my drink. Yes, do so. And Benn is going to stand up and walk back over to the bar. It is getting a little busier in here as more and more people are coming in for food and drink. And so Benn has to wait a little bit before Stilton can get over to him. And when he does so, he looks at Benn and says, well, let me guess, you've got more questions? Benn nods and says, I'm looking for a few other people. And he gives the descriptions that Silas gave to him. I really need to speak with them. If you know where they are, that would be very helpful to me. And he kind of pulls out a few coins and sets them on the bar. And let's go ahead and ask the fate chart. Does Stilton recognize these descriptions? I think it is 50-50. 11, which is almost an exceptional yes, but it is just a regular yes. So he does recognize these descriptions, and he kind of nods and says, yeah, I've seen them in here before. Let's see. The brutish one that you're talking about, he comes in from Heartvale now and again. I haven't seen him in a few days. And then he kind of like pauses for a minute and thinks. And then he's like, actually, now that you mention it, I remember him talking to that fellow you were asking about earlier. Benn nods. And he says, he comes in from Heartvale maybe every couple weeks. Usually has a sit down with somebody who's just come in off the docks. And then he usually stays the night and heads back to the city. What about the other two? He thinks for a minute and says, well, the one with the oiled hair, I'm trying to think of what... it's definitely a merchant sigil on his livery. Oh, you know, there is an office here for... Ooh. Who is there an office here for? It's got to be one of the families, probably on the Council of 12. So I'm going to go look at my list of counselors. And let's say that the livery matches up with Kansa Tukio. And I'm going to roll on... Well, let's see. I'm going to roll on an in noun to see what this sigil is that's on the livery. A 3 and a 3. It's a fork. So a stylized fork is this livery. Maybe it's even like a trident or something like that to keep with the sea theme of Heartvale. And what does Kansa Tukio do? Like, what is their business? I'm going to, I think once again, roll on the hobbies table in Maze Rats. 1 and 4. Calligraphy. Interesting. Okay, so Heartvale is well known for its art scene because of the Royal Dispatch Company, because of the Kingsword. And that's probably why this representative of House Tukio is here at the Griffin and Moon, which, as we discovered last episode, is silently owned by the Royal Dispatch Company. So this representative of the Tukio family was here meeting with this Kingsword operative for some reason. So I think what happens is Stilton says, "Oh yeah, that was Pano Tukio. He does some importing of calligraphy pens and inks, usually through Veilwater, and he has a small office here in town. You can probably find him at his office tomorrow." Ben nods and takes that in and says, "Excellent, thank you. What about the other one?" So we've got the one that was described as brutish is the man who comes in from Heartvale and comes and goes basically, in a day trip. The wrinkled fellow is Pano Tukio. And we had one more who was scrawny, had a huge beard, and dated clothing. What that says to me is that this is somebody who's down on their luck, and so doesn't necessarily have a whole lot going on for them. So what kind of person would this be? Let's go over to our character tables in Maze Rats, and I'm going to roll on Underworld NPCs, because this sounds like somebody who is not necessarily in high society or regular society. See what we get. A 4 and a 2, a highwayman. So I'm going to take that as a prompt, and I'm going to say that when Ben mentions the description of the scrawny man with the huge beard and dated clothing, Stilton grows serious, and he says, "Oh yeah, I know who that is." And let's get a name for this person. I'm just going to roll on lower class surnames here in Maze Rats and see what that gives us. 3 and 1, Gimbal. He says, "That's Gimbal. Gimbal's part of the Stone Throwers." And Ben says, "The Stone Throwers? I'm not familiar." Stilton says, "I'm not surprised you aren't familiar. They're sort of between highwaymen and mercenaries. We basically let them exist around Veilwater because they nominally keep the road safe for other travelers, despite the fact that sometimes they do ask for a tax for their services. But mostly they leave travelers unbothered, and they also act as a sort of militia for Veilwater. Gimbal, I haven't seen him in a few days, but that's not unusual. He and the Stone Throwers are usually out in the woods doing whatever their business is, and then they will show up and eat and drink for a little while, spend some coin, which I don't even know where they get their coin from, and then they're off again for a few weeks." Ben says, "Interesting. I appreciate your assistance, Stilton," and he slides those coins forward. "My friends and I need a room for the night. Is it possible that we can get a couple of rooms?" "Yeah, of course. How many do you need?" He doesn't know when Iron Gull and the others are going to show up. So I think he's just going to get 2 rooms. And the reason he gets 2 rooms is because I think he doesn't know Orchid well enough to know if they're going to want their own room or if they're going to want to share a room. He knows that he and Arid can bunk together and that will be fine, but he doesn't want to push it with this new companion. So he's going to order 2 rooms and food, and then he's going to go back to the table where Silas is sitting, drinking and just sort of looking around. And I think because it's been a little while since we've done this, I'm going to go ahead and end the scene there. And we are going to increase the chaos factor because while not a whole lot happened as far as Benn having bad experiences with anything. There's more chaos in this situation now than there was before, especially with the Crest soldiers getting ambushed and pretty badly beaten. So I think that there is just an increase in danger in the area, especially now that we know that there are these stone throwers who are probably the people who ambushed the Crest in the forest and maybe also ambushed the Shade. So we are going to set up our next scene, and I feel as though the next scene is maybe dependent on an answer to a question for the fate chart, which is, do Arid and Orchid discover any more information than what Benn discovered during his time talking to Stilton? And I think it is going to be unlikely that they discover more information. And I'm going to use the old scene chaos factor of 5 for this. 51 is a no. No, they do not discover anything new. Okay. So there is no other scene, I think, that needs to be played out where they, go kicking in a door in the middle of the night or anything like that. So I actually think the next scene set up here is the Crest survivors show up in the middle of the night. And I've moved around some of the threads a little bit. So we're currently working on Find the Shade in Veilwater. I've also added Discover what magical power source is beneath the Griffin and Moon. I've got Restore the relationship with Merrick, learn about the connection between Erdira and the Red Fox. I think I can actually take that one off because we know that they are related to each other. And then I also took off Learn More about the Lieutenant because I don't know that that is necessary at the moment. And then the fourth thread that I've got open right at the moment is Escort Silas Wilberforce to the Elfheim Ruins. So our scene setup, once again, is the Crest survivors show up in the middle of the night. I'm going to roll my d10 and compare it to my chaos factor of 6. A 4, which is below the chaos factor and an even number, which means there is an interrupt scene that preempts this scene that we are setting up. So let's determine the event focus. 99. NPC positive. Interesting. All right, let's go ahead and roll on our characters to see who the NPC positive is for. And our characters are currently Iron Gull, Lephalia, Vidala family, Merrick, Erdira the Shade, the Fell Swords, Gillen, and I should add Silas Wilberforce on here too. So I'm going to roll a d8 because there are 8 options, and that's going to tell us who this NPC positive is for. 7. Gillen. Interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll action and subject to determine how this is positive for Gillen. 92. Vengeance. And the subject, 7. Allies. Vengeance of allies. So we know that Gillen was a carpenter who was dismissed from some sort of job or some sort of task. And I think after his interaction with Benn, he is maybe actually a little taken with the idea of joining the Crest, and in so doing, maybe will be able to get vengeance on whoever it was that dismissed him from his task. So I think this scene that we see is Gillen walking into the crow's nest, and it is still under watch by the DeSoto guards. And so there is an air of sort of tension inside of the crow's nest. And as Gillen enters, he looks around and says, "Hello, everyone. I'm here looking to sign up. Where do I go? Who do I talk to?" And I think Saga, who is sitting in the common room, as she has now taken up some of Iron Gull's duties of commanding the rank and file soldiers while he's gone, looks over and says, "Who are you?" And Gillen says, "I'm Gillen, and I met one of your crest out on the road. He told me that if I was looking for work, I should come here. So that's what I did. I'm a carpenter by trade. He said you might find use for someone with some trade skills, and don't mind getting my hands dirty either." And I think Saga says, "And who was this crest that you spoke to?" Gillen says, "Well, no, he didn't really give me his name, but he had one of those fancy medallions, and he proceeds to describe a dark-haired, olive-skinned man who Saga recognizes as Winestone. And she says, "Good. I'm glad to hear they made it out of the city. Come in, Gillen, and have a seat. Let's talk about your future with the crest." So, as Benn and Arid and Orchid come back together, after they have done a little bit of investigating, it's now nighttime. They spend a little bit of time eating and sort of making their plans for the following day to follow up on this representative of House Tukio and to find out more about the stone throwers. And they go up to their rooms. And I think Orchid does take the extra room, not because they are self-conscious about sharing a room with these two individuals, but I think they say, "Since you got 2 rooms, it would seem a shame to put them to waste. If you don't mind bunking together, I'll take this spare room myself. We can stretch out a bit." To which Arid says, "Does not bother me at all. I am quite used to spending time with Benn after the last week." Benn says, "I'm surprised you haven't grown tired of me yet." Arid says, "That's because I keep beating you in cards." And they retire to the rooms. I think in the middle of the night, Benn wakes up because he hears a bit of a commotion downstairs. He sits up and kind of nudges Arid, who also wakes up. And they get up and start to make their way down into the common room of the inn. As they emerge into the common room, there is an argument going on, and that argument is between Stilton, who is sort of blearily eyed, staring at 3 bedraggled figures. One of those bedraggled figures is saying, "You better tell me where my compatriots are now, or there'll be hell to pay." And Stilton is like, "Who were they again?" And Iron Gull looks past him and says, "Oh, never mind. There they are. Winestone, Arid, good, you're here." Then looks at the rather sorry state that Iron Gull, Lephalia, and the last surviving crest rank and file are in, and he says, "Sergeant, what happened?" Iron Gull glares at Stilton and says, "It's a long story. Well, it's a short story, but not a story for telling amongst mixed company." Stilton says, "Look, I don't know who you are, but I can't have you bleeding all over the floor here." Iron Gull fishes some coins out of his pocket, throws them on the bar, and says, "How about now?" Stilton eyes the coins and then shrugs, scoops them into his hand, pulls a bottle from underneath the bar, sets it down, and then says, "I'm going back to bed," and turns and walks back into a small room off the main common room. Iron Gull takes the bottle, grabs a couple of cups, and pours drinks for everyone. At this point, Orchid also comes down, surprisingly quiet for someone of their size. And Iron Gull looks around and says, "We were ambushed. We were ambushed in the woods by bandits or mercenaries or something. And there were a lot of them, more than we could handle." He looks around and he says, "Lessem, Bear, Erelm, and Oswulf didn't make it. Well, the rest of us were fortunate enough to get away." Lephalia, who is a little bit subdued, which seems strange for her, sort of blinks and looks over at Iron Gull and says, "We survived, yes, but we cannot let this go unanswered. We must root them out. We must destroy them and show our strength. The crest is not to be trifled with, not by any of these backwater bandits." And she goes quiet for a moment. And then she looks over at Arid and says, "What is this place? What am I sensing?" Arid says, "I do not know, but I sensed it as well. I think it is some sort of magical power source or something that is underneath this inn." She begins to look around, almost instantly distracted from what she was saying as she starts to try to suss out where this magical power source is emanating from. Iron Gull watches her go for a moment, sort of shakes his head a little bit, and then turns back to the others and says, "Here's the problem. If they're the same ones that attacked the Shade, then they knew why he was on his way to Veilwater. And they can probably guess why we're here too. There's no help coming. It's just us now. So we're going to have to prepare. They could be coming in the night." And let's go ahead and ask the fate chart, because I think that makes sense. Are they going to be attacked in the night by these stone throwers? I think it is 50-50. I think they don't necessarily want to attack the inn, but they might be driven to if they are desperate enough, or, we don't know why they might have taken out this Shade. So let's say 50-50. Chaos rank of 6. 63 is a yes. Yes, they are going to attack the inn at night. So Iron Gull says this. He says, "We moved as quickly as we could to Veilwater, but there's no guarantee that they aren't shortly behind us. If they do follow us, if they do come for us, we have to be prepared." I think at that point, Orchid is going to pull Bone Eater out of its sheath next to their side and say, "Well, at least I won't miss the action this time," and begins to sort of roll their shoulders. Benn says, "Maybe you and Kine should take a rest, sleep while you can. Arid and I will keep watch." Iron Gull nods and says, "I think you're right." Benn says, "There are rooms upstairs. I'll show you the way." And they head upstairs. And I think that's a good place to end this scene. So our chaos factor is definitely going up to 7. And our next scene setup is going to be survive the stone thrower attack. So chaos rank of 7. We're going to roll our d10 to see how this goes. And we got a 7. So this is going to be an altered scene. So how can we alter the survive the stone thrower attack setup? It is going to be the next logical option. And what if that is that they see the stone throwers arrive and start looking around, and there are a lot of them. And so I think Benn, turning to Arid and turning to Orchid from their vantage points, says, I don't think we can fight them. I think we have to escape them. So the next logical scene setup to me is avoid the stone thrower attack. So it is the middle of the night in Veilwater when the stone throwers arrive. There are at least a dozen of them, if not more, and they are moving through the village with a casual confidence. They are making their way towards the romantic maid, which is the furthest in out. And I think Benn, from his vantage point, looking out the window of one of the rooms in the Griffin and Moon, realizes that they're going to go in by in to find the crest who survived and escaped. Benn wakes the others and says, Sergeant, there are at least a dozen of them on their way here. We have some time. We can try to slip away. Irongull gets up and looks out the window and sees the same thing that Benn saw. Men and women with torches heading towards the romantic maid, weapons already drawn. Seemingly nobody else in the village has noticed this yet, but once they enter the inn, there is all possibility that chaos will break loose in the village as the village wakes up. Maybe they will feel as though they're under attack. Maybe that could give the crest coverage to escape. Benn says, Sergeant, I think we can make it to the harbor. There has to be a boat or two there that we can take and row down shore a little ways to at least give ourselves some distance. Then we can make our decisions on how we want to proceed. Irongull nods and says, I agree. All right, Benn, lead us out. And Benn is going to head towards the door with the others in tow. Now, as he's going, I think Arid is going to go with him and is going to attempt to harness the unspeakable power to help them move carefully and quietly. So this is going to be a roll plus arcane. His arcane is +2. 9 on the dice plus 2 is an 11. So on a 10 plus, not only does Benn get a +1 for the help, but I can choose to either take an additional +1 or Arid does not expose himself to danger, cost, or retribution through this action. I think Benn and Arid are all in together on this sneaking around and doing stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and take +2 for this. So Benn is moving through the open space outside of the Griffin and Moon. And how dark is it? Is there a full moon here tonight? I think it's 50-50. I don't have a good sense of where we are in the moon cycle, so let's call it 50-50. Chaos rank of 7. 11 on the dice is an exceptional yes, which means it is definitely a full moon, no clouds in the sky, so it's bright out. Maybe they don't even have torches, these stone throwers that are approaching, because the moon is so bright and the sky so clear that it is easy to see. So I think that's going to make it a little bit challenging to sneak around, but still possible. So I'm going to use my Black Hood move, Like a Shadow in Darkness, to essentially try to lead the members of the crest out of the Griffin and Moon and towards the docks. So this is roll plus steady, which is 2, and I get plus 2 for Arid's assistance. So that is going to take us to a plus 4 on this roll. Here we go. 4 on the dice plus 4 is an 8. So on a 7 to 9, I get to choose 1. Those looking for you position themselves within striking distance. Those looking for you mistake someone else for you. Those looking for you are distracted by something else that's equally pressing. You stumble across something important or interesting as you hide or escape. Ooh, okay. That could be interesting. That could turn the tide here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 50-50 here, because I think it's either those looking for you are distracted by something else that's equally pressing, or you stumble across something interesting or important as you hide or escape. So 1, 2, or 3 will be the first option. 4, 5, or 6 will be the second option. It's a 5. You stumble across something interesting or important as you hide or escape. What could that be? Let's go to action and subject. 18. Move. 90. Move danger. Okay, so we stumble across something important or interesting as we escape, and it has to do with move danger or movement of danger. Here's what it is. So they slip out into the night, and they are sneaking their way towards the harbor. The stone throwers have broken up into small groups. They are investigating the inns in Veilwater, and I think Benn hears a group of them coming, and he gestures for the group to hide. And I think they see a scrawny, bearded man in sort of drab clothing who is holding an axe in his hand. And as they are passing by this hiding place, Gimbal says, "Felhart said to not leave any survivors. That was true for the Shade, and that's true for these Crest. It's better for everyone if these mercenary dogs eat dirt." And the group passes by. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please tell anyone and everyone in your life about it. And if you haven't already, please rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really does help others find me. If you want to interact with me, my handle on Instagram and Twitter is @ErrantSoloPod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.